We have four groups or two speakers and two groups of speakers of two each. The first group that will speak are going to be Celma and Gabriela of Cartografia de Hospitalidade, they focus on the on the architecture of the city and the ways people relate to it, which to me sounds like a little bit like the psychogeography of architecture. They'll start. Yeah. Afterwards, after that, we'll have Fred. Fred has, over the last decade or so, created a bunch of concepts and tools to put in perspective the relative size of space, history, and time, with maybe at least the one product that that I've enjoyed the most being the Deep Time Walk, which is a lot of fun to use and to use when walking. After Fred, we've got Anastasia, who hails from Greece, and she will be talking a little bit about, I'm not totally sure what she'll be talking about, but she has presented about the evolution of the flaneur, and all of you, of course, have seen everyone's videos. So you have seen her brief introduction of the evolution of the flaneur, as well as some of her own work directly built on or inspired by Google Maps, creating a kind of palimpsests of different types of imagery retrieved from Google Maps. And the last two speakers are Transiuntus Mundi, which is Gabriel and Cândida, and they create or facilitate or host the creation of 3D video in a bunch of places around the world that you can consume if you can consume it as a 2D video, but you can also immerse yourself if you have something like what is it called, Google Cardboard or something. All right, so I already forgot. Celma and Gabi, go for it. You're going first.
Okay, the cartography of hospitality was born during my postdoc research. It began when I began to study in the beginning of the century about walking, about the walking as a social aesthetic practice, and of course the situationist, the psychogeography, and all those things. And when I decided to do my doctoral research, I was interested in how the people feel the city, but not in the way that we are doing in the cartography, but in a way to make like a kind of code that I call it counter maps of hospitality or something like that. So I decided to migrate to the cartography of hospitality, and I found this group, and in the institution that I was doing my postdoctoral research, where Gabriela was. And since 2017, we are working in this way to discover how people feel somewhere in the city, and we can say in a landscape or in a specific place, right? And how the people feel this place. And we use the walking as an instrument to do this research. The main instrument to do this research is the walking, and we can say the word in English, the perception, the way the people perceive during the walk up a street, an avenue, or a square, or a park, and wherever, right? And we conclude that everybody feels in a different way. So each person has its own expression of this perception, and they can transfer it for a cartography, subjective cartography, like a video or a drawing or photographs and wherever, what they want, or maybe a music, or they just express their feelings during a walk, making a video, summarizing something. It's quite a free way to express their feelings about a space. So it's something between the architecture of the city, but even in the art field. It's in the border. It's in the border of both expressions. So for what we use this? In order to say, okay, especially for architects, it's not just a data. The space is not just a data, just numbers or something like this. We have people there. People can tell what they need, their needs, what they want for this space, how they live in this space, and what they are prepared to eat. Especially now during the pandemic time, we could see lots of changes about the space perception, especially in the cities. You know what I mean. And maybe Gabriela wants to say something. Gabriela.
Hi, I'm Gabi. I get in the cartography and the collective in 2017. At this time, we made this methodology of the cartography using the devices from the apps to do this data, like Celma said, to organize these data and make a methodology to analyze the territory and the interior. So we can analyze the urban space and the interior space. So we can analyze squares, like Celma said, or lights, the sound, how people related. How can people, like in pandemia, how can people be in your homes? I don't know how to say this, Celma, but como que a gente fala isso? Tanto fora de casa quanto dentro.
Inside and outside the house. No, in the meantime of the pandemic, we decided to research how people were related to it differences of the space conceptions. For example, that you are inside your house, but you can bring by the cyberspace everything inside home, as Anastasia does in her research. I love your research. I was very identified with your research because of this. The cyber flanese is quite lovely because is something that we did in intuition during all the pandemic, in intuition and the inauguration as well, because we were working inside home, we were working out inside home, we were in a party inside home, we are doing everything inside home. Yeah. In those times, hard times.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to cut you both off here because you went way over your 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. But I do have 1 or 2 questions that I want to save up for later because maybe it will help start the discussion. But I want to move to Fred.
Yes. So I will talk about working in deep space and deep time with the use of mobile phones. So to understand the environmental crisis, the Anthropocene, we need to understand our place in space and time relative to the story of the Earth and to our own life. So it's very hard for our mind to integrate very large scales, like the size of the solar system, for example, or the size of the galaxy, or the age of the Earth. So embodied perception by the walk is a way to approach this understanding with the mind and the body together by converting each step in a space-time value and virtually work a timeline or a space line. So since 2010, I did several prototypes with some artists and scientists. And I am especially interested in exploring the transcalarity by the walk, the micro-macro. It can be a walk to cross a galaxy or a walk at the atomic scale also. And there are beautiful connections between different space-time scales. So it's interesting and important to get advantage of the sense of mobile phones to create walking stories synchronized with our steps. In 2017, we created with the Schumacher College in England, supplemented Babak, the Deep Time Walk. You can download for free at deeptimewalk.org. And it's inspired by a real walk on the coast of Devon by the scientist Stephen Harding. You walk the evolution of life on Earth through 4.6-kilometer walk, where each meter is 1 million years. The narrative is synchronized with your body in motion. Most of the walk is bacteria, 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 and 900 steps before the end of the walk appear the first multicellular organisms. And hominids only appear in the last 5 steps. So of the 4.6-kilometer walk. So this walk is really a transformative experience. And I guess that transformative experiences are efficient way to shift worldview for a long period of time. So I believe that it's important to use mobile technology because we, on the other side, we are facing a loss of time perspective with digital media. I like to say that the digital landscape is like a promise with no horizon and no memories. We are clearly facing a pandemic of disconnection with internet and the social network. And yeah, so it's very important to use technology to help us to connect to our story with the ecosystems, with the story of the Earth, and really understand our scale in space and time, our location, your deep space-time location. So yeah, that's what I wanted to introduce.
Thank you very much. Considering you took up a nice small amount of time, I'm going to throw in one question. In the presentation that you shared before this meeting, you list a bunch of the prototypes that you worked on, but I only recognize the Deep Time Walk as one that you managed, or that is currently available at least. Have you managed to execute the other prototypes as well into products that are consumable, or not?
Yeah, you know, it's a very big problem because I did several prototypes. For example, before the Deep Time Walk, we did the walk through time with the HP Lab in California. It was in 2012, and we never finished the app. And also the Deep Time Walk now is still working, but it's now 4 years old, and it's in danger also to disappear. I did another app with scientist Rich Blundell, which was related about a walk in the wood to see the light in different wavelengths, and the project is gone. So a lot of projects disappear really. You know, that's what I said. You know, we have a big problem of we are losing memories, and yeah, so it's very complicated to keep this creation. alive, and available. It's very, very complicated.
Yeah. Not really the subject of our discussion today, but it's very true. Technologies die at an amazingly fast pace. And indeed, the mobile apps that were created 3 or 4 years ago through the upgrades of mobile operating systems might be literally impossible to use today unless they are continuously maintained. But of course, this is not something from the last few years. This goes back further, because who can play a Betamax video, for example, right? Or even a VHS? Who has a video recorder at home? But yeah, it's a problem. Thanks, Fred. I'm going to move on to Anastasia.
Hi. Well, I'm Anastasia from Greece. You probably saw my presentation, which is on Vimeo. It's a presentation about cyber flânery on the cyber stage. Actually, as Abel said, cyber flânery is the only choice during pandemics. Right now during the pandemics, walking was not very easy to do, even in the streets. So the cyber flânery maybe was one of the only ways to escape from the domestic reality, from home. My presentation focuses on art making, which comes from cyber flânery, as I said, with the use of Google Maps, of geospatial technologies, actually cyber flânery takes place online, on the cyber stage, and it's a real-time spatiotemporal and network experience. Cyber flânery can produce artworks. The artist can be inspired from cyber flânery. Actually, I am a visual artist, and I have a PhD on networks and on flânery in networks. Actually, what I see in all this experience of urban exploration, which take place physically or virtually, all I see in this experience is networks. Sometimes there is a synergy of networks, but some other times there is a battle of networks. Flânery is the freedom to move in networks. Flânery is the freedom to move in physical or digital networks. However, pandemics constitutes a threatening network of virus propagation. Actually, it's a network of the virus who goes all over the planet. And this network stopped this freedom, stopped our freedom of free circulation in the physical city. So I think that during pandemics, there was a considerable shift from physical activity and flânery to digital activity and cyber flânery as the only way to escape from domestic life. However, I think that during this challengeful period, we all understood how vital it is to walk, how vital it is to move or to travel physically, about our well-being, about our inspiration, etc. I don't know if I have anything else to say. Actually, you can also find my presentation. It's a presentation of 15 minutes. You will see the evolution of the flaneur in this presentation. You will also see how the cyberflannery associates with the theory that all world is a stage, as William Shakespeare said, and how this theory can be transposed on the digital stage, on the cyber stage, according to some thinkers. And you will also find some artworks of mine about cyberflannery, inspired from Flannery in Google Maps. But there are also many other artists and many other researchers who do cyberflannery and who produce artworks and research projects with cyberflannery.
Thank you, Anastasia. One thing that I was reminded of when I was watching your presentation is the website mapcrunch.com, I think. Maybe you are familiar with it, but maybe not everyone is, so I'll give a brief overview. What mapcrunch.com, I think, does is it when you visit the website, it positions you randomly somewhere in the world with Google Street View. A game, they published this is already maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, it's a while back. A game sprung up around this particular platform, in that you would visit the website and then your objective would be to get home. Because you didn't know where it would position you. It was a random spot in the world with only Google Street View as your window onto this world. And your objective would be to get to an airport from which you would then theoretically be able to virtually travel home. But first you would have to figure out where you were. And many of the random spots are in the middle of nowhere, where you really have no clue where you might have been dropped. So you first have to find a highway, and then hopefully you recognize city names, or you just gamble that the biggest city that's in the list, if you don't recognize the names, have an airport from where you then can travel home. But this, of course, this movement through Google Maps is quite literally virtual flannery. It's quite literally a virtual walk, made as if you woke up on the other side of the world, not knowing anything about you know where you're supposed to live because you want to go home, but not knowing how you got there. That's one thing I was reminded of with your presentation. But I also was wondering, you did your presentation on the backdrop of a bunch of shades of blue, Anastasia, with each blue being pulled from the logo or the representative colors of particular major technology brands. Did you do similar pieces with other colors or only with blue?
With other colors, no, not really. I have a preference. And I also found that many of these platforms use the color blue.
Yeah.
The color blue is very common to this kind of international platforms. That's why I got inspired from this. All these platforms use a blue, but a different blue.
Yeah.
So I got inspired from this.
What fascinates me about that is, I'm sure all of you have heard of this, that the Greeks, Anastasia,
Yes.
you people, but 2,000 years ago, did not have a color for blue. Did not have a name for blue.
We had Cyan.
Already
C-Y-A-N.
2,000 years.
Yeah.
So a kind of light blue. Okay.
We called it Kyanun. This is the specific word in ancient Greek, Kyanun.
There we go. So I've been
means
lied to. You did have a blue. But either way, it's the color blue arrives very late in the vocabulary of a language. One of the last colors that is identified, because there is very little blue naturally occurring in our surroundings. Right, in nature there is very little blue, except for the sky, if you want to call it blue. But most people do not, if they do not have the word for blue. Anyway, then I want to move to Gabriel and or Cândida.
Yeah, apparently I'll have to move by myself here because I think that Gabriel is having a connection problem. So even his phone is disconnected. So I believe he totally lost connection there.
I can
So
see
I'm
him,
going to
though.
talk about the Transeuntes Mundi, which is a project that me and Gabriel we created in 2019 by combining projects we had before. So me and Gabriel, we are both artists, we are composers, and we base our investigation for this work on the methodology of walkscapes, which was created by the Italian architect named Francesco Carreri. So we created this work, which is a performative work with emerging technologies that we flaner, let's say like this, like to use the word that we just heard now. So we travel the world building this archive of stories. So the act of walking or the walkscapes mediated by emerging technologies, which means 3D audio and 3D image. It is a search for stories around the world that represents the idea of transculturalism. So we come back 30,000 years ago. That's why our logo refers to a dot that starts in Africa and starts like circulating the world till we populate South America. And we want to represent the idea of an accumulation of culture to the current moments. So right now we are performing Deriva 01, inspired by the International Situationist. And we combine a combination of different artistic methodologies of composition in cinema, documentary, photography, music, sound art. And then we build this work, which I discuss in my PhD that I'm completing this year. It's a PhD in composition of emerging technologies that I do in the UK. And I also research in New York. That's why I'm in New York. And we have been presenting this as a project in virtual reality exhibitions, immersive interactive virtual reality exhibitions since 2019. Last year, for obvious reasons, we have been performing this as an online work, which was called Web Deriva 01. What was a different version from the Deriva 01 was not an adaptation of the work, was a new work being created. And we performed the idea of the minimal stories, which was a concept that Gabriel created some 10 years ago for another project that he developed, which was the Transeuntes Medellin. Gabriel started working with the idea of walking as a methodology for arts creation for a long time. And we got to meet because I was starting my PhD and I wanted him to be my director. It ended up that he was not my director, but I ended up being in the UK, and nowadays he's a guest director to my work. And we have been performing this work that combines also the installation with concerts, an electroacoustic concert, plus projections, plus performance with the audience, and a bunch of other activities that also transformed in a workshop, in an educational project. We became a company in the US. We have the trademark of this name. We have the trademark of this kind of methodology. So it became also an entrepreneurship project of creating arts, education, and social innovation through walking. That's it. I think so.
Thank you. One thing that I was reminded of with looking at the 3D videos that you have posted on your website is a thing that has surged over the last, 2 years maybe, and YouTube is full of them. They are walking videos. So although the videos that you post are stationary and 360, walking videos typically are someone walking and filming what they see. I was reminded of that because it's a kind of similar look into the lives of others in public space. But also, for me, these walking videos are, I don't find them interesting at all. But lots of people do. So now my question to you or to Gabriel is, why?
Why you don't like them, or why people do that?
Why do people like them? What
That's
makes
a very
them
good
popular?
question. So the methodology that we created with something that we call also methodology Transeuntes Mundi for composition. It's based on the stationary camera, as you said, omnidirectional camera, stationary, because we are looking for stories. The act of walking for us is the performance of the project itself by migrating through different cities, countries, and places, territories. But what we are looking for are stories. So what we want to do is to stop, see you coming by, hear what you're saying, interact with the stories that are happening in that place. So we are looking for a narrative. So our work is including, I discussed this as in the lineage of cinema, of a lineage of neorealism. And we work with this material of real people, real stories. And I think that's the interesting part of this work. So I believe that when you're just walking, it becomes something that will probably get bored after 30 seconds, because maybe you are not finding something to call your attention or your focus to fix your attention. Maybe that's why you're not enjoying that so much. And I hope that you can, especially in our in-person exhibitions, that you can wear the VR and then you interact for 2 minutes in each place. Nowadays we have a 56 minute presentation, and you're going to interact with different languages, different places, costumes, bodies, ethnicities. It's what we are making a homage to the diversity of human beings, human stories, languages, bodies, costumes, places. So I believe that walking for us is not a final goal, but it's a medium. It is a methodology to get into narratives, which is a different perspective, I believe so.
Do you also, when you make these or create these recordings, do you also stage the narrative, or are you being led by what happens around you?
Absolutely. On the fly. Nothing is, so that's why we are identified with the neorealist film, which is, we use non-actors, right? Everything is real life. Nothing is scripted. The place is also non-planned. So we use the concept of psychogeography to migrate the city and decide where to record. We have just some establishments in terms of angles. Tomorrow is the first day we are recording after the pandemic started. And we have some plans in terms of how to position the camera in terms of angles, and also in terms of the recorders. I work with big recorders for sound. I'm originally a musician. So there is nothing scripted. The scene is not composed. There is nobody. And that's a very good question, because people that watch the work, they say, no, you hired that person is an actor, right? I'm saying here in the backstage that it's not, because in the installations we say something like maybe. We leave everybody like open. We don't answer, because not to kill the magic of the work. But a lot of people think that we are recording in real life, like in real time, that the camera is open somewhere. Some people think that is happening. They don't believe it's a recording. And second, they believe that a lot of these things were scripted and they were just spontaneous. Then, of course, there is our work to create the scenes, right? So we compose the work. We have nowadays almost 100 hours of recording that we select to be part of the work on purpose to combine them.
And where are you going to do the recording tomorrow?
Tomorrow is Medellin. That's why we came here. So it's a different project. It's the Transeuntes Medellin. So we do this project also as a migrational specific work also. So we were hired here by the university to develop a work specifically for this town. So we are working with an archive that Gabriel has with 1.5 million negatives that he received from the 70s here. So we are making a kind of a counterpoint of current transeuntes with past transeuntes, which is a word in Latin. I didn't say this. The transeuntes mundo is the flaner, is the human being that started walking in Africa 30,000 years ago and was walking, and now is here in Medellin, and that's what the thing that we are documenting through contemporary art.
You have a few videos up on your, or maybe one or two on your website that were shot in the US, New York. Yeah, the trailer, of course. No, but you have a few short videos, including one or two that were shot in the US. And if there's one thing that Americans are anal about, is the use of the commercial use of their images, so images representing themselves. And this in the US particularly is often solved by having to sign release waivers. Do you do something with this?
So this project was proposed to the British Ethics Department because as a PhD thesis, I had to also submit this like to be approved. And according to all international laws, we were recording in public spaces in a visible area, so everybody was seeing it, was being documented. And we only removed the recordings that people asked not to be featured, but it was just like any other corner of the world or New York that we have been filmed the whole time, and these recordings can be also accessible online. So the condition was that I could not use this as data, so I cannot analyze the behavior of people, I cannot comment on that, but I can use that for artistic streaming only.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, very interesting and quite diverse, although supposedly we're all in the area of, what was it, the deep mapping, although I'm myself not very sure what deep mapping is. Maybe someone wants to throw a balloon in the air as to what it might mean in a minute. But before we do that, I still have a question, because I didn't earlier, for Celma and Gabi. You were talking about recording, or basically discovering and understanding how architecture, how the city makes people feel, and then acting on these things. But how do you record your information?
We ask for people to tell us about it first. So usually we ask for a group to do it with us, right? And we use, I think we can say an anthropological method to just listen more than to talk with. Just give space, give voice to people that never have a voice. That's because we are in our publications, we can say that we have an inclusive political position, right? We are interested not only in people of middle class people, for example. We are interested in the homeless, what they can say about this space, in the visitors and the user, the daily user, but even what the people just passing through the flaneur, the accidental flaneur, and everybody, not just one kind of people, but the diversity interests us. And the only way to know about it is to give voice for their expression.
Yeah. So what? Go on.
We use the apps like Strava, the mobile, take pictures to record the sounds. Is what you're asking for. And we record, we make some interview with the people, the homeless, the people we can pass through in this ways. We take pictures. I don't know. In the Strava, we can collect the data with the pictures, with the sound, and we make maps with the app. I don't know what other app we have use, Celma, to collect data.
Situations, no, we provoke some situations like the poets do. For example, we can read a text somewhere, right, and see what people do with this situation. For example, we did it several times, or we just there and wait for people. Somebody who is getting closer to begin to talk with us about their lives or about what they are doing there, and that's it. And we register, and we always make a text about it, images with the pictures and the videos we did at this time, in order to register this research. And then we publish where we have space for it.
So now I'm very curious to see the product of the typical product of your work. That is this map in Strava with all these routes and stories and photos and audio bits and pieces. Where can we watch this?
You can see something in our homepage. We can put
but that's an image, isn't it?
Yeah, Cartography of Hospitality. Cartografia da Hospitalidade is all in Portuguese, but...
well, most of us
I've
here
been trying
speak
to write in
Portuguese.
the chat. It seems that the chat is not happening, right? It's not working.
No, it's working, but no one is chatting, I think.
I already tried to send many messages internally here, and it says that it's not active here. Unless, because it says no message yet, and I already sent like 4 messages here.
Really? Well. Maybe Blue Jeans is not so good after all.
I will try to share with you with the chat, okay?
I see the link.
If it's
Gabi
not,
just shared the link.
okay, Gabriela just did it. Okay, it's this one. We are. It's all in Portuguese. We must translate this in English and in Spanish sometime. But there is some articles, right? If you're looking for my profile at Academy from .edu, you can find some of our publications, even in English and Spanish, right? I can put there.
But what I've seen on your site, as far as maps were concerned, were static maps. But what I'm hoping for is something that's interactive, where I can...
yes, also static. Yeah,
okay.
And actually, Cândida, I was with Careri in 2012 in Rome.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
yes,
that's so nice.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
It's quite nice.
Look at that. I would love to get in contact with him. So my research is developed between the School of Arts, Design and Architecture and the lab of the International Computer Music Research. So I do this cross. They made me do the cross between architecture and arts. That was very interesting. I already researched your whole website, all of you. I saw there is a Baiana also in your project. I'm also from Bahia. So I kind of already got to know a lot of your project also. Very interesting. Congratulations. I'll try to contact him also.
We have several things in common. We can talk later on. And the first inspiration for me when I was doing my master degree about walking, that later on I published it as a book, was his book, Walkscapes. The beginning of the century. Yeah, I think he was the first one in this time of in this era to talk about this, and made it as an aesthetic. It was a kind of rescue that he made. With his
and there is something to add that.
Go ahead.
There is something to add that we have some cartographies with a team that we have some experiences with the feminine, for example, that we made where women felt scared, for example, that she felt some fear. So we can make some experiences, places that they're, I don't know, say Celma. Celma, help me.
You know that everywhere is quite an adventure for women walking, be a free walk around the city. Everywhere women, all over the world, there's some time that we feel a fear, like to go somewhere, like it depends. Some streets or parks, and there is a group here in Porto Alegre that we exchange a lot that they are accused in this kind of study, and we began to be interested about it. How we can work deeply about the situation that is everywhere, right? Now in all the big cities and wherever. And I think we think about this is it's a problem to free the flaneurs, the soul of the flaneurs, maybe something like this in this.
But then,
way.
so practically speaking, how do you make it easier for the flaneuse to also experience the city?
You observe, and you can advise each other.
No.
It's a kind of fear that just women feel. You can understand it like a humankind, like a man. You can be closer to this field, but it's quite complicated to understand because we have fears about because it's different. It's different to walk around the city as as a man and as a girl.
Yeah, I'm not discounting this at all.
I can share some. Sorry, go ahead, Baba.
No, go on.
I could share some interesting, for example, situations that I had. So the recordings in our project are done by me and Gabriel, and we have an engineer that also works with us. And we have then 3 sets of equipments circling the world with us, right? So I can totally say how different it is for me to perform the recordings than for them. Sometimes it helps me being a woman. Sometimes it totally disturbs the process. Also, depending on who is with me, that the community or the place accepts that or not. I'll give you an example. I was with a friend of mine, which is a German musician also, and we were recording close to a Cuban community, a Cuban circle of drums, and they didn't accept his presence, for example. They said to me, you can record, he cannot. So he had to leave, things like that. So we have tons of experiences by performing the work, or places where people said, why you're with the camera here? We had a situation in Colombia that they almost killed us, literally. So we started recording in an area that we knew that was dangerous, but we didn't know how much or not. So we tried, and I have that recorded. We recorded for 30 seconds, and they came with guns and said, get out of here now. Who are you? And at the same time, so I can say that this walking can be for sure a very dangerous activity that I don't perform myself recording anywhere. I'm very scared of recording in the cities nowadays, I'll tell you. After 2 years recording with this, there are certain areas, I already know when I get to places, I say, I can record here or not. Or in Rio, for example, that a group almost stole all our equipment, which is also something we don't want, right? We have a stationary equipment, right? And we have to get far from that, because if not, you are inside the scene. So we had imagined that you have to leave an equipment like that, something weird in the middle of Copacabana Beach. That's not safe at all. So things like this that can also be tricky for the methodologies of the projects, and for sure are stories that we have to tell from our walks and things like that. But I also would like to. Sorry.
No, go on.
I was going to bring here a question now for Fred also, but I don't want to cut the subject here. If somebody wants to say something, for sure I'm going to write you later for us to continue this talk.
I'll let you ask your question to Fred in a second, but then I have a follow-up question based on what you were describing as far as your experience in Copacabana went. Is it possible to have the recordings immediately transmitted to a device elsewhere, instead of it being recorded on a memory card or whatever on the device itself?
We tried that. The problem is that you have to have an internet of very high speed receiving and sending that. That's why, so we have an engineer. We discuss a lot of the technicality of the work. So we tried that, but we don't have, for example, a camera that has unless that something came in the last year or so, because things developed so fast, but you would have to have a camera that, at least with 360, that sends the signal to kind of another source somewhere. So we don't have that streaming in real time. They do have the cameras, right? So every street you have cameras streaming that, but it's not, we don't have these 360 cameras for customer use. You don't have that, not that I know. And that was something also that we were looking for, to have some kind of eyes in other places. But for what I know, only like the police or governmental things that they have this kind of structure.
What I was actually thinking of is not so much to stream it to the internet immediately, although that would be ideal, but then you indeed might run into bandwidth issues. But I was thinking of streaming it to a local source. So like, say, use a mobile Wi-Fi network to stream it to another device 50 meters away.
Yeah.
Because what you could
it's a Bluetooth thing that you use.
Because what you could then do, I mean, you might lose your hardware still, but it becomes a performance piece, right? You leave it in Copacabana and you rig it such that the thief cannot turn the machine off,
like
steals the camera. Yeah, well, like a performance piece, right? The person steals the camera, runs away with it, but keeps on being recorded. And you are recording what he is, or the camera is seeing as he runs away with it.
Babak, let me see something. Yeah, but you know that's
Gabriel is here.
Yeah, I'm here. I am listening everything. You know, Babak, I think for us it's very contrary that we are looking for. The idea is not to find this kind of situation very dangerous, or give some kind of importance to the idea of capture the reality. No, we are following the idea of the minimal stories, the very, very deep time search of reality. You know, when Fred said before, the idea of deep time is how you use this kind of technology for stop for some time the reality, and you can see in a very deep way the reality. And that happens when you see the minimal stories, when you see the real life. And you know, it's very curious, because it's some kind of contradictory situation, or paradoxical. Most of the art, the expression of art, are looking for reality. But at the same time, we are the people who is making art. Many times are try to separate from the reality in the strategies they use. And you know, it's paradoxical, because yes, we are following the reality as some kind of goal in art, but at the same time, you use the idea of, no, it's not, we must to prepare, we must to construct, to build the reality, for present, make some kind of dramaturgic strategies for build the reality. But you know, by now we are looking the contrary, the deep experience, slowing the reality in this kind of strategies, and one of them is the 3D sound, 3D vision.
I totally understand what you're saying. I was also more like making a joke about filming the thief running away with your equipment.
Yeah.
Besides that, it's a performance piece that can only be done once, right? It's because of that, not very sustainable. No, but I totally understand what you're saying. What I believe that you're doing with what you're facilitating with the 3D recordings that allow the user or the viewer to be immersed in the experience is for the viewer to be able to focus, or to have his gaze directed at all the little things that happen around him in the video. And why I think that makes a lot of sense is because of the following. It is in a very similar vein to how the situationists try to nudge people away from the spectacle, right? By pushing,
right,
nudging them into an experience that is more focusing on the smaller things, on the liminal spaces between the shouting neon signs. So no, it makes total sense to me. Cândida, you had a question for Fred.
Yeah, I was going to comment exactly on what Gabriel, we were very caught by the idea of deep time. We had a meeting like 2 weeks ago, right, Fred? And we couldn't continue with that. And that was a subject that really connected a lot to our research because we are also talking about a walk of 30,000 years, right? And there was a big discussion on how to communicate this idea in our final product, right? Because we aim for a final product. We present this to the audience. We have this goal, right? We have this aim to communicate this idea. The work doesn't have one word, so we don't explain anything. We leave the spectator free to understand the work as it is possible, needed, wanted. And we have been having results of all sorts with this work, very interesting, from kids to elders, like enjoying and not enjoying the work. And the idea of deep time, Fred, I saw his presentation. He comes back so much longer than us because he goes like to a sidereal space, to sidereal time. And that is something that calls a lot my attention because this work started from the idea of a DNA test. That's how I performed a test, and that brought me with the information that I carry all the ethnicities of humanity. And then all this conversation started of how is that possible that somebody born in Brazil can carry the whole world? And then we started the idea of the walks of the Homo sapiens. But Fred goes much further than that. And I was very curious exactly to enjoy the final result of his works, to see how this thing can be enjoyed, if there was, like, I don't know, maybe a didactic, a pedagogical explanation about that, or which element he chose to perform that. I tried to find the work, but I didn't. Fred, can you say a little bit about how you represented this super wide space of time?
Yes. Really, I believe that what is very interesting in the deep time work, it's 4.6 billion years old story of evolution of life on Earth. And we end up with human beings at the last step, really. And as far as I understand, as a walker or as a flanner, walking this deep time story tells us that we are made of other species. We are really intertwined in time with an evolution of life on Earth. And when we know this deep story, it creates a lot of connections in the present with the environment, with the other species, with the ecosystem. We understand that really part of nature. We are also nature. So when you look closely at human beings, I expect that it will open up to look closely also to at other beings and other life forms. And I'm just wondering, what is the flaneur of the 21st century? And I really expect that the flaneur of the 21st century have a deep sense of environmental awareness and also has a deep sense of connection and communication with other species. So the work, as it was made with deep time work, is a conversation between a scientist, a woman scientist, and the Shakespearean fool character. And the fool is always asking the good question no one would ask to the scientist. And then they are working, and of course it's really synchronized with your work, because if you stop, they stop talking, and you are between the fool and the scientist, and you work. And it's totally a sonic experience. You don't have images on your screen. You have a timeline. You see where you are. You see the number of million years. You can have a text description of this moment, but it's really done to be immersed with the sound, no images. And yeah, so what is the flaneur of the 21st century? Yeah, I really hope that it's expanding, it's going beyond looking just as human beings, and going really further. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
I've got a question. I've got a question, Fred. Can I
Go
ask?
for it, Robert.
Okay. I'm sorry I'm late to the meeting, but I immediately a thought came to me. I was in Lisboa. There was an avenue where I experienced conscious evil. And every time I crossed this, I experienced the same conscious evil. I tried to avoid it, but it was the main thoroughfare. Now, I haven't since or before ever experienced anything like that. But I'm wondering with deep mapping, are these sorts of things recorded? Are they a part of the, I don't know what you call it, psychogeography or whatever?
I'll let anyone answer the question if they have something to add to this, but I want to, with that, maybe also take a little bit of a step back on the same subject. First of all, to answer your question very directly, I believe that, yes, it makes sense to include this in mapping because psychogeography arguably is about how places make you feel. But what that doesn't really address is what is deep mapping? Who wants to say something about this?
I'll try to. I see deep mapping as a way to go deeply in a cartographic expression about a cartographic mark in a space. So I found in Robert's question quite interesting subject, the devil, the evil. When you are in a main avenue, and you can feel the evil in order when you are crossing this space, you can do it in deep mapping. Of course, you just have to find the appropriate expression that can express this feeling for you, right? Like an artist, like an artist does for something, right? Maybe it could be an answer. If he wants to drawing about this or to express his feelings in a screen, maybe if I would feel this thing, right, crossing an avenue, I would cross this avenue screaming, for example. It would be a performance, right? And I can say, get out, devil, please, because I'm screaming for you getting out of my life, right?
I didn't think of that at the time, but it's a great reaction.
There's a good chance that if you do this, you will cross to the other side safely. But is then deep mapping in Selma, in your definition, simply, well, not simply, but is that then a very detailed mapping, a very layered mapping?
No, I don't. I think it's a deep feeling mapping for us in our language of the cartography of hospitality. When you express a deep feeling about a deep feeling expression about a space.
So
it
deep
doesn't
as
matter if the mapping, it doesn't. For example, doesn't matter the map. The conventional map is out of question in our work. You just use if you want it. A mapping can be a drawing, can be this paint, for example. That's for us.
So then you are using deep in.
You feel it's a mapping.
Right. So then you are using deep in opposition to superficial. Am I understanding this correct?
Yeah, not in this binary way. You can use it. You can use this. Of course, you can use it. But a superficial thing can be truly deep for another person, for example. I can feel something superficial that's deep for you, and you can feel the same for me.
Can I add something?
Yeah, me too.
Cândida,
So
go for it.
if we think on deep as a sense also of expanded, right? I am also remembering here the idea. So when I'm also talking about mapping and discussing this work, I remember the idea of the atlas and the cartography. So we see representations of atlas and cartographies across arts, which is my field. That's why I'm discussing this. So we have, for example, John Cage, which was one of the main composers of last century. He has 3 compositions that they are named cartographies, and they are star cartographies. So we have also Atlas, and then we have the Atlas of Jorge Luis Borges, which is a book with photographies and chronics, which is text, right, and poems. We have the Atlas, which is an opera from Meredith Monk. So it's an opera that has the narration of the travel of 4 characters. So we have mapping as also a kind of a very expanded meaning that can maybe start from a very basic or usual definition of a representation of land, which, by the way, in our work we also use the map starting from Africa. It's the picture that we have in the event of this meeting. We use this representation, which is the walks of the Homo sapiens. That's the map that we use to as a menu for our navigation. And we have this map so as an opera, as a book, as a music composition. So I personally like a lot the idea of expanding the concept of mapping, which I think that deep mapping relates to.
Can I add to this? In trying to translate the deep, I think we're using the wrong polarities here. To gain a more full understanding, from my perspective, would be instead of what I would substitute for deep would be like a vision or visionary, and what I'd substitute for superficial as fantasy. So fantasy is something that you just fantasize over, but a vision is something substantive. It's about something. And so it's not superficial, because that suggests a dilution of the deep. It's more where something is and where it isn't. More that sort of sense to me. It's identifying something that's invisible only in a deep sense, because it's
you
it's
found there. Like a spectrality from the spectrality from the devil, something like this.
Say again, sorry, I didn't hear.
A spectral presence.
Yeah, spectral. That's a good word. Spectral is a good word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's quite deep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you.
It's a huge experience, my friend. It's quite an experience.
Yeah, I live that continually. That's my life. Well, with this COVID-19, we've had the ability to avoid the spectre of each other because we give each other a certain amount of distance. But I'm just fearing when we stop doing that we're going to have to start locking up with other people's spectres again, and I'm rather apprehensive of that.
On that exact note, I have a question for Anastasia. You highlighted in your presentation and also in your talk how we have shifted from, as far as Flannery is considered, from the physical to the virtual or to the cyber. It's very convenient to stick to cyber Flannery or online walking, because we have to do very little to make it happen. We can just sit behind our screen or behind our phone and consume the digital. Do you see that we are going to go back, assuming that we will leave this pandemic, or that we only are going to go back a little bit, or has the ghost been released from the bottle and the cyber Flannery is the only future we have? And if that is the case, how do we fight that?
Well, I think that we should go back to the physical Flannery. We should go back. because our bodies, our biology is not made for the digital screen. But what I have heard and what I see in YouTube and other advertisements and what I read for the fourth industrial revolution, etc., is that the physical and the virtual flânery will be mixed. For example, I have heard that there will be a kind of flânery with we will be able to wear a kind of belt, and we will walk on a corridor, this exercising corridor, and at the same time we will see the screen, and we will, so in this case, we will do a kind of cyber flânery, but we will walk physically. So if technology in near future gives us this kind of choices, I'm afraid that we will not be able to avoid the digital screen. Maybe we will combine the cyber flânery with physical walking, but again we will be in front of a digital screen, I'm afraid.
Technologically, what you're describing is quite amazing. I know exactly what you're referring to. The platform that you walk on consists of little balls that rotate in all directions and can go up and down with, as a result, that you as the walker feels like you are walking on real terrain, but in reality you are not moving from your exact location, and then being or consuming a projection of, for example, a 3D video with 3D audio, you are being giving the impression that you are actually walking in the outside world, but what you're really doing is not leaving your room. Technologically, this is amazing, but culturally, this is horrible, because it facilitates even more isolation than the isolation that everyone unknowingly has fallen into with the consumption of media through mobile devices that is now so commonplace. But then my question remains, how do we fight this, Anastasia? I need to know.
How do we fight this?
How do we fight this?
I don't know, with physical activity, with trying to maintain our conventional, traditional kind of social gatherings, etc. Because otherwise, the digital is very convenient, as you said. It has no cost. There are a lot of things, and the same goes to the video games industry. The video games are developing this kind of physical exercise combined with playing video games. But this will be isolating. I think that we should, I don't know, maybe have some program of daily life, that we should do some physical exercise and some social gathering, etc. Actually, there are some new professions of psychologists that fight against addiction to the digital screen. And the ways to fight this is to program the daily life with less and less and less exposure to the digital screen. So maybe that's the way, but on the other hand, there is a monster which is called the industry, I don't know, which is called digital world, that wants to invade more and more our lives. And it's convenient, so it's a vicious circle. Maybe it's a huge problem for the next years. It will be a huge problem.
Yeah, Yeah, it will be a huge problem. Well, it's only a problem if we think it's a problem, right? If no one thinks it's a problem to sit behind a screen all the time, then who are we to say, or who am I to say that it's a problem? But I do believe that everyone who's here in this room believes it's a problem. But maybe we are just a minority, right? Yeah. So no one has a patent-breaking idea for how to get people out walking using technology. Well, Fred has the best ideas because you can only consume his digital technology if you actually go for a walk. And in fact, Fred, if I'm not mistaken, if I walk in place, like on a treadmill, deep time walk doesn't work very well, right?
What's a treadmill? I don't understand this word.
A treadmill is like when you walk in place.
You have the what's the name, armchair option. So you can push a button in the preferences, and the walker is walking, and you can stay at home and listen to the story.
I think we all agree that you have to get rid of the armchair functionality in your app because people need to go out and walk.
Yeah, but it's done for people who cannot walk. That's very important. It's very important also to get access to the people who have not the mobility. That's the main reason for that. And of course, I'm a big user of VR content. I am testing a lot of VR content, very immersive. What you was talking about, the simulation of walks and all this stuff. But at the end, the technology will not, I believe, will never get this richness of the outdoor. It's not possible, really. There's so much life, so much diversity, so much senses, so much. I'm really not. I don't think it's a problem. The problem is education. Really, teach people to see the world as the beauty of the world. That's what we have to do. It's not a problem of technology. Technology is good or bad. It depends on what you do with it. But technology, is passive. If you keep your mobile phone on your table, nothing will happen, and it will stay here for years. It's what you do what matters.
It's very true, of course, Fred. But the same can be said about Coca-Cola or ice cream. The Coca-Cola only makes you fat if you consume it. But when you start consuming it, you will consume more and more of it because it tastes nice and because everyone consumes it.
Yeah, because we have a species, we have a lot of addictions. Then you have to start to be addictive to your addictions in the sense that you take control of your addictions.
And then it becomes about education. I agree. But that's actually a much bigger problem. Well, that might be a much harder problem to solve than devising technology that helps people to go out. Maybe not. I'm still amazed by, in this context, by games like Pokemon Go or what was it before that, Niantic's, I forget, the similar game that was about two teams fighting in the real world. These were very much games that got people to consume through their screen almost continuously, but they could only if they also went out to explore, right? So these are ways to still have people use technology, which shows that technology is indeed not bad or good inherently, but can be used in both ways. Bob, you have a question?
Yes, the English philosopher Collingwood, in The Principles of Art, roughly defined the role of the artist to work to prevent the corruption of consciousness. And I think we can't do it, but we can strive to do that. And it's an internal mechanism that we have to contact within ourselves. So that is like the whole, if one sees that as the whole job of what art is all about, then it throws it into perspective. But I think this is the only way to combat things like this, with our whole selves become something different or present ourselves as something different. Back to spectres again, really.
Yeah, and fighting the spectacle, apparently. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're almost 1.5 hours in. I think it's been a very nice discussion, but we might not yet be at the end. Is there something that someone wants to add that we have not discussed yet?
I want to invite you for a virtual trip, a virtual walk. Our work is not open full time, only when we are part of conferences and festivals. And today, exactly, we have a link open to visit the work. So I want to invite you all to follow us, like, and exchange links. We are on Facebook and on Instagram, and we have our exhibition open today for the people of this conference. So the link is in our page here on the conference. It seems that the chat is not working for me, so I apologize on my comment. It's something that I cannot write. The blue jeans didn't really work well here with my computer, but I cannot share the link here, but you can find the link in the page of our conference. So I would like you, if you want to take our trip, please use headphones, right? One of the main elements of our walk is that it's an immersive walk that is with a computer in front of you, is mostly by sound. Sound is a very important element of our composition. And then I would love to hear your comments. If you want to join us one day in one of our in-person exhibitions, we hope to be resuming that, who knows, by September. We are doing what we call the Transeuntes Mundi Tour. And this conference is part of this program. We are hoping to resume that by the end of this year soon. Thank you so much for having us here today. Thank you all for that. Discuss it with us. This content is always a very fascinating subject that can cross researchers from so many different fields. Always a pleasure to discuss this.
Yeah, no, thank you, Cândida. I'm sorry that the chat is not working for you. I will, with pleasure, share the link in the chat for those for whom the chat does work, but I don't know where to look for the link.
So I can tell you if you can write it there, because it seems that I cannot write here. So it's transeuntismundi.com, which if you go in our bio, if you click there, in our bio, you can find the link. There is a trailer and there is the exhibition open for this conference. The link is transeuntismundi.com/WAC, which is the one we are here, 2021. That's the link. It's in our bio.
/AC and then?
WAC 2021.
Yes, just I wanted also to share an experiment we are doing with artist Swazi Gezenek and Stephanie Whitelaw. We are preparing a dark walk. It's a walk during all the year, during full moon, during the night. And it's an experience to walk and become different life forms, different species along the walk during 1 hour. So it's very experimental, and I share with you the link if you want to know more about this also. We'll start this in September, this project in September.
It's in the chat. Thank you, Fred. And Bob?
Something to add for me. It's not so much the corruption of consciousness that we're up against, but the exploitation of consciousness. That's just a clarification I wanted to make.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on this. Thank you again, all of you. I hope to see you soon, but for now, I'm going to say goodbye.